A lot of you, especially those of you who've reached out to me in the background, have been like, oh, I have all these ideas, but I just haven't gotten started. And honestly, the only way to keep making videos is to get started. Hi everybody, today I am going to be giving you 10 tips on making Plan With Me videos, basically from start to finish. I am going to do this as part of a series. Over the next few weeks, I will be putting out videos on the equipment that I use, on the editing software that I use, talking through an editing process, but today I'm going to kick it off with some tips to help you get through. I've got a lot of questions about Plan With Me's on my last Plan As You Go and how I film them, and I figured that this would be as good a time as any to give you guys some advice if you want to start making those kind of YouTube videos. Couple of quick disclaimers. A, I'm not a fucking expert. I've made a shit ton of these videos over the years, but I'm not an expert. So if you want expert level editing, YouTube-y type shit, I'm not your girl. But I can give you my tips as somebody who has no idea what they're doing and has kind of half-assed my way through it this whole time. The second tip is that these actually can probably apply to almost any kind of video that you want to make. I'm talking about them in the context of a Plan With Me where you put your planner down and you have the camera facing downwards and you are planning out your week on camera. Standard Plan With Me. If you're in the planner community, you get this. But if you make other kinds of videos, pretty much all of these things can apply in different ways. So if you're interested in 10 tips, then stick around because we're getting right into it. And the first tip that I have for you is to schedule for consistency. Now, what does that mean? It means that you need to decide how many videos you can reasonably make in a month and then commit to that for at least 3 to 4 months. For two reasons. One, because all the fucking YouTube fancy people say that being consistent on YouTube, publishing on a regular basis, is good for growing, but for two, it's good for you. A lot of you, especially those of you who've reached out to me in the background, have been like, oh, I have all these ideas, but I just haven't gotten started. And honestly, the only way to keep making videos is to get started and to just make them and commit to them and blah, blah, blah. So I'm not saying publish once a week. I publish 4 times a week right now. You know, you don't have to do that. Just decide how many videos you want to make per month and then figure out when they're gonna work best in your life and then commit to that and give yourself at least 3 or 4 months to get the hang of it, because that gets you practice. And I've always talked about how practice is one of the most important things you can do with lettering. It also counts for doing video. My second tip is to use what you have. If you have a cell phone, film with your cell phone. Cell phone cameras are great. If you have a different camera, my first videos were filmed on my kid's little crappy point and shoot camera. It was like a $50 point and shoot stacked on some books. And that's how I started making videos. I have a different setup now. My setup has evolved, and you can see here all of the different kind of things I'm using, the way I've got it set up, and I'll have stuff linked down below in the comments, but I will go into a more in-depth kind of walkthrough of all the stuff I use next week. But suffice it to say, all you need is something to film with, something to edit with, and like upload it to YouTube, and a way to get your top-down video. And I will suggest that this arm that I'm using, this articulated arm, if you have a desk you can clamp it to, is probably one of the least expensive methods of getting overhead video, and I've been using it for a couple months now, and I'm really happy with it. I will link that down below. It's like 20 bucks on Amazon, and it can hold your phone, and it works really, really well. The only thing it's not good for is if you have a big, fancy, heavy DSLR camera, which I don't. Don't spend a shit ton of money on it until you have shown yourself that you are willing to keep making these videos. If you go and spend a shit ton of money and then don't make any videos, you're gonna feel like a punk, so don't do that. My third tip for you is to prep in advance, and this is actually something that has evolved for me as I have made Plan With Me's. I do 2 things before I start making a Plan With Me. I get out whatever stickers and washi tape I think I'm gonna use. Now that doesn't mean that I don't still dig through my shit. Believe me, I cut a lot of that out. But I pull out, generally speaking, what I think I'm gonna use in terms of stickers and in terms of washi tape, so I have it just ready to go and I don't have to waste time digging around for it while I'm filming. The second thing I do is my list. This list is the list that I create every time I film a Plan With Me. And what it is everything I know I'm gonna put in my planner. And sometimes it evolves. Sometimes I add to it as I'm working. Sometimes I think of things and just put them in. But this is a great starting point. Now, you don't have to do this if you really don't want to. The reason I'm suggesting it is because when you're filming a plan with me, it helps you stay focused on the thing that matters, which is the actual planning, if you don't have to dig through all the things to figure out what the fuck is going on that week. I put anything I know I need to put into my planner, appointments, things I want to do on those specific days. I also put the weather and the meal plans on this so that I have them all in one spot and I don't have to go look in 5 different things. This has just been a way that helps me stay prepared when I get started, and it makes the filming process a lot less of a pain in the ass. My 4th tip for you, and this is very specific if you are doing what I do when I film plan with me's, which is record sound separately. I use a Canon G7X to film my plan with me's, and I'm using it to film here, and you can hear that my audio in this video is different than my audio in my plan with me's. The reason being is I haven't figured out a good way to record my audio doing these yet. I need to get a different kind of microphone for that. But when I film my plan with me's, I use a different mic. So this tip is specifically if you plan on recording your sound separately. If you are, you need to be able to sync your sound up so that your video footage and your sound match. The trick to this is when you start, when your sound is going and your visual is going, is to clap. If you use that clap as like your touchstone and you use that to line up the sound from your original video and the sound you're going to be replacing it with, you can line them up, make sure everything syncs, and then get rid of the sound on the video and only use the sound from the audio. Kind of a little advanced thing, but I just wanted to mention that in case you were planning on recording your sound separately. Now this tip is probably one of my biggest tips for any sort of making video, and that is to talk to the camera like it is a person, not like it is a camera. Now this takes practice. Practice, practice, practice. Especially if you're self-conscious, especially if you hate the sound of your own voice, especially if you feel like a jackass filming while you're working in your planner. Believe me, I understand. The best way to get past that is to think about the camera like it is somebody you're chatting with, somebody you're super comfortable with, somebody who would be really interested in hearing you talk about your planner. Because when you talk to the camera like it is a person, when people watch it, it feels like you're talking to them. And that is a way for people to connect with your video. When I talk to my camera, I'm thinking about all of you out there. I love talking to my community. I love talking to people in the comments and talking to people in person. And when I talk to the camera, it's just another extension of that. You build the skill over time, but if you just think about the camera as a person and not as just a piece of technology, it will help you start to get over the self-consciousness of sitting there at your desk rambling at your planner. And on that same note, also, talk about what you want to talk about in your plan with me to the camera. So don't feel like you have to say, well, I'm going to lay this sticker here and I'm going to lay this sticker here. If you want to explain why you're putting stickers down, which is something I try to do, then do that. If you want to talk about something random that's unconnected to your planner, where you just want to talk about your day, I do that too. You can do that if you want to. If you want to talk about you're putting stickers down because you think that they're pretty there, talk about that. Don't fucking worry about, like, I've made videos where I talk about planner videos I don't usually watch, are videos where people just explain why they decorate, not why they, like, their function behind why they decorate. That doesn't mean that those videos are bad or that they're not worth something. They're just not videos I watch. But you get to make the videos that you're comfortable making. And especially in the beginning, when you don't have a bunch of people giving you feedback as to what they want to see, talk about whatever the fuck you want to. Just make sure that you're comfortable with everything you're saying. Don't expose something from your family or your life that, you know, maybe you didn't want out on the internet. My 6th tip for you, and this one is gonna save your ass so much time, so much frustration in the editing process. When you are filming, be aware of pauses and your sentences. Now, what do I mean by that? If you start tripping over your tongue, you don't get a sentence out that you want to, instead of just like continuing on, stop and start the sentence again. There is my weather and my meal planning. Because that way when you're editing, you can just snip it out and you don't have to worry about that part that you fucked up on. Being aware of when you're talking and how you're talking with an idea of later in the post-production process, it's gonna be immeasurably helpful. Like, so helpful. My biggest tip for when you start filming is if you're talking and you catch yourself like stumbling over a sentence and you want to redo it, don't start the video and stop the video again. Just stop talking for a second and then start the sentence over. You can do that as many times as you want to, but keep filming. You don't want to keep stopping and that's what editing's for. That's why you can go in and cut some shit out. And keep your editing simple in the beginning. You can not edit at all if you want to, but if you do want to edit, I would suggest starting very simply with two things. My first tip number 7 is to cut out your mouth noises and stumbles. So if you did what I said and you stopped when you stumbled and then started over again, you can go back and cut those out. If you get like any weird mouth noises or snarfly sounds, kind of trim those out as well. What you do is you zoom in whatever editor you're using, whether it's iMovie or Final Cut or Premiere Pro or Windows Movie Maker, zoom it in so you can kind of see how the audio is going. And what you want to do is you want to just trim it until you get rid of that little bit. The harder you zoom in to one of these things, the more you can see the audio, and it gives you a spot where you can snip it out. And that again takes practice, but I wouldn't fuck around with hella effects and anything else. I would just worry about trimming out anything that sounds really unpleasant or anything that you don't want in there because you feel like you fucked up. Tip number 8 is another thing you can add to your plan with me's. It's another thing that kind of makes them easier to watch, and that is speeding up parts where you're not talking but you want to leave it in. If I didn't have anything to say but it's something going on with my hands, I'll leave it in, but what I'll do is speed it up. I have experimented and I change how fast I speed something up based on how long I want it to go or for various things. But my rule of thumb has always been to speed it up to either 800% or 1000%. So 8 times or 10 times the regular speed. Those ones seem to be, for me at least, my aesthetic. But experiment, see if you can find a speed that you like. While you're doing this though, don't forget to reduce the volume of the thing you're speeding up, because hearing that sped up sound in the background is really, really, really like nails on a chalkboard. So remember to make it quiet and then speed it up. And on that note, you need music. And my tip number 9 for you is if you're gonna use music, you need to use free to use Creative Commons music. I pay for a service for my music, but you don't need to do that at first because YouTube actually provides a metric shit ton of music that you can use in your videos for either free with no attribution or free with attribution in the description. And it's at the YouTube Audio Library. I will leave it linked down below, or you can search YouTube Audio Library on Google and it'll bring you right there. And there's so much. You can look for duration, you can look for mood, you can look for instruments, you can look for any of that. The biggest tip is you don't want to pick something that is super distracting. You want something that's going to play in the background and you want to reduce the volume so that your voice comes out clearly, but you want to use music that fits your personality. I like to use stuff that's kind of R&B and soul because that's what I really like to use. And then my final tip for you is to upload unlisted first. You have the ability on YouTube to upload to either private, unlisted, or public. My suggestion is to upload to unlisted for 2 reasons. The first reason being that way you can watch through the video and make sure that everything uploaded okay. The second reason is that you want to wait until the resolution of the video is at 720p or higher. And you'll see that with the little HD symbol in the corner. I'll put a screenshot of it here. Sometimes when it uploads, it goes to the lower resolution first, and you don't want that to be the video that goes live because YouTube doesn't like that and it won't favor you in the algorithm. So wait until the full resolution of the video is in place, and then you can hit public on it. And those are my tips for filming Plan With Me's. I feel like it was very technical and I hope I gave you some good information. Like I said, I will be having videos coming out over the next few weeks on the equipment that I use and how my in detail editing process. But for now, these things should get you started. And that's my biggest tip of all of this. Just get fucking started. Get started, start filming, and start publishing. That's the only way you're ever gonna get any better. So I would love to know in the comments any questions you have about making videos in general, whether they're Plan With Me's or art videos or talking head videos or whatever the case. I'll take any of those questions down below. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video.